Jack Harper had always thought his life was ordinary. He was a mechanic, nothing more, nothing less. He worked on starships, made repairs, and lived in a small apartment on Earth. But everything changed when he was called to a diplomatic mission on Zorvia, a planet known for its advanced alien civilization. He had no idea that this trip would turn his life upside down. The trouble started during a peaceful diplomatic meeting between Earth and the Zorvian Empire. Jack was there as a translator, doing what he did best, understanding the machines and helping with communication. What he didn't know was that his presence would be misinterpreted by the Zorvian people. He had made a simple mistake during the meeting, thinking a specific gesture was harmless. But to the Zorvians, that gesture represented an insult to their family. Senator Vlara, the Zorvian consul, was furious. She had 3 granddaughters, all of whom were highly respected within the empire. The mistake Jack had made was seen as an attack on the Zorvian family's honor. The Zorvians were a proud people, and their traditions were strict. In their culture, honor was more important than life itself, and no one could question the decisions of a consul. When Jack tried to explain that it had been a simple misunderstanding, his words fell on deaf ears. The Zorvian court took his actions as a sign of disrespect, and his fate was sealed. In an unexpected twist, the court ruled that Jack would be forced to marry all 3 of Senator Vlara's granddaughters as a form of apology to the Zorvian family. The ruling was bizarre, yet undeniable. Jack stood in shock, his mouth dry. Marrying 3 alien princesses was not something he had ever imagined, let alone as a punishment. He tried to protest, but the court simply ignored him. "This is the only way to restore our family's honor," Senator Vlara declared with a stern voice. "You will marry my granddaughters or face exile from the galaxy." The weight of the situation hit him like a ton of bricks. Jack had no choice but to agree. He knew that if he didn't comply, he would be thrown into deep space without any protection, and no one on Earth would be able to help him. As much as he wanted to reject this decision, the consequences were too severe to ignore. The 3 princesses were the granddaughters of the most powerful consul in the Zorvian Empire, and their marriage was no ordinary event. It was a political and cultural obligation, a binding contract between families. To be chosen as their husband, even under these strange circumstances, was an honor if you could survive the cultural shock. Jack's first thought was how in the world he was going to handle this. He had heard rumors about the Zorvian royal family, but he never expected to be in their midst, let alone married to all 3 of them. He had no clue what their culture expected, nor did he understand the responsibilities that came with such a marriage. The granddaughters, however, were not pleased with the court's decision either. They stood together in a quiet corner of the courtroom, exchanging nervous glances. Jack noticed that none of them seemed excited about the arrangement. In fact, they looked just as confused and unhappy as he was. The eldest princess, Rilla, was the first to speak. "This is absurd," she said quietly, her eyes meeting Jack's. "I didn't ask for this, and neither did my sisters." "But we have no choice." The middle princess, Zira, crossed her arms and glared at the court. "We're being used as pawns in a game we never agreed to play. This isn't what any of us wanted." The youngest, Laura, remained silent. Her face was a mask of confusion and fear. She had always known her life would be different because of her royal status, but this was beyond anything she had imagined. Jack looked at each of them, trying to understand their situation. They weren't happy about this marriage either, but they were bound by their family's rules. He couldn't help but feel sympathy for them. They didn't deserve to be caught in this political mess just as much as he didn't. The court adjourned quickly after the ruling, and Jack was escorted to a holding room to await the start of the marriage proceedings. As he sat there, the reality of his situation began to sink in. He had no idea what to do or how to navigate the strange world he had been thrust into. Was he supposed to fall in love with these alien princesses? Or was this just a matter of fulfilling an obligation? Jack had no answers, but one thing was clear. His life was no longer his own. As the hours passed, Jack had time to think. He had to survive this marriage, and somehow he needed to find a way to make the best of it. The princesses were now his wives by order of the court, but what would that really mean? He knew there were dangers ahead, not just from the Zorvian Empire, but also from the dark political forces lurking behind the scenes. The only thing Jack knew for certain was that his life was no longer about fixing ships. Now, it was about navigating a complex galaxy where honor, politics, and marriage meant more than anything else. And he wasn't sure he was ready for what came next. Jack Harper had barely processed the court's ruling before he found himself walking through the grand halls of the Zorvian Consul's palace. The marble floors gleamed under the soft, artificial lighting, and the air was filled with a strange, unfamiliar scent. Everything about this place felt alien to him. Nothing was like Earth, and nothing would ever be the same again. He was escorted by two Zorvian guards who walked in silence, their sharp, yellow eyes scanning the hallway as they guided him deeper into the palace. Jack tried to keep his mind focused on the task ahead, meeting the three granddaughters of Senator Vlara, the Zorvian consul. His new wives. The words still seemed surreal. As they reached a large, ornate door, one of the guards knocked twice before pushing it open. Inside, the room was vast, decorated with rich tapestries and delicate alien flowers that Jack didn't recognize. There were three women standing near the center of the room, each of them striking in their own way. The first princess, Rilla, was tall and regal. She had a calm presence, her dark green skin shimmering under the lights. Her eyes, an unusual shade of violet, scanned Jack with a quiet intensity. She stood with her hands folded in front of her, her posture perfect, as if she had been trained for years to handle such moments. Jack could tell she was the oldest of the three, her maturity evident in the way she carried herself. The second princess, Zira, was shorter and more fiery. Her bright red skin contrasted sharply with her jet-black hair, and her eyes glowed a soft, almost dangerous orange. Unlike Rilla, she didn't stand still. She paced back and forth, her energy filled with restlessness and defiance. Jack could already tell she wasn't someone who would easily be told what to do. Then there was Laura, the youngest. She was more delicate in appearance, her pale blue skin giving her an almost ethereal quality. Her long silver hair cascaded down her back, and her quiet demeanor made her seem shy in comparison to her older sisters. She wasn't pacing like Zira, nor was she standing tall like Rilla. Instead, she stood with her arms loosely crossed, watching Jack with cautious eyes. The room was silent for a long moment, the tension palpable. Jack felt like he was in a strange dream. He was supposed to marry all three of these women, but nothing about the situation felt real. His head swam with confusion. How was he supposed to live up to their expectations? What were their thoughts on this forced marriage? Finally, Rilla spoke. "So, you're the human we've been hearing so much about," she said, her voice calm and controlled. Her words weren't unkind, but they weren't warm either. Jack felt the weight of her gaze, as if she was analyzing him in ways he couldn't even begin to understand. I didn't ask for any of this," Jack replied, his voice shaky. "I didn't mean to offend your family. I just made a mistake. I don't know why I'm being forced into this." Zira stopped pacing and crossed her arms, glaring at Jack. "You think we're happy about this?" she snapped, her voice filled with frustration. "This marriage isn't about us. It's about some ancient custom our family is bound to. We're being forced into this just like you." Jack was taken aback. He hadn't expected Zira to be so open about her feelings. "Then why—" he began, but Zira interrupted him. "Because we have no choice," she said, her eyes flashing with anger. "Our family's honor is tied to this. If we don't follow through, the consequences will be worse than anything you could imagine." Jack turned to Laura, who had remained silent throughout the exchange. She was staring at the floor, her hands clenched together in front of her. Her quiet nature was obvious, but there was something about her that made Jack feel protective. He took a step toward her, offering a small, reassuring smile. "I'm sorry," he said gently. "I didn't mean for things to turn out this way." "I know this isn't what you wanted either." Laura finally met his gaze. There was a sadness in her eyes, but also a glimmer of curiosity. "You're a human," she said softly, almost as if she were thinking aloud. "I didn't expect someone like you to be the one to marry us." Jack wasn't sure how to respond to that. What was there to say? He was just a man caught in the middle of a strange situation with no way out. He had no experience with royalty, no understanding of their customs, and yet, here he was, about to marry 3 alien princesses in a culture he couldn't even begin to comprehend. Rila stepped forward, breaking the tension. "This situation is difficult for all of us," she sighed, her tone softer now, "but we will do what we must. Our family's reputation is on the line, and we cannot allow it to be tarnished." Jack nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He understood now that this wasn't just about marriage, it was about politics, power, and family. His actions, though unintentional, had set off a chain of events that would forever change his life. Zira rolled her eyes but remained silent, clearly not interested in anything Rilla had to say. But Laura stepped forward, offering a small, shy smile. Maybe we can make this work," she said, quietly. "I don't know how, but we'll try." Jack looked at the 3 princesses, each of them so different, yet all bound by the same fate. In that moment he realized that his life had just become far more complicated than he ever could have imagined. And though he didn't know what the future held, he knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning. Jack sat in a large, lavishly decorated room surrounded by the 3 Zorvian princesses. The palace was enormous, with ceilings that seemed to touch the sky. The walls were made of dark, polished stone, and the floors were covered in rich carpets. The beauty of the palace was overwhelming, but Jack couldn't help but feel out of place. He was still trying to process everything that had happened, the court ruling, the strange customs, and, of course, the 3 princesses he was supposed to marry. Rilla, the eldest of the princesses, stood by the window, her hands clasped behind her back as she gazed out into the vast landscape. Her calm demeanor had not wavered since Jack had met her, and Jack was beginning to understand that she was someone who could handle any situation with grace. He respected her for that, even if he didn't agree with the circumstances that had brought them together. Zira, the fiery middle princess, was pacing back and forth, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She clearly wasn't happy about the arrangement, and Jack didn't blame her. Zira's rebellious attitude made it clear that she wasn't someone who liked being told what to do. Still, Jack couldn't help but admire her strength and determination. Laura, the youngest, sat quietly on a plush chair, her legs crossed as she looked down at her hands. She had been mostly silent since Jack arrived, and he couldn't help but wonder what she was thinking. Unlike her older sisters, Laura seemed to carry the weight of this situation differently. While Rilla and Zira expressed their frustration, in their own ways, Laura seemed to be quietly processing everything, keeping her thoughts to herself. As Jack sat there, he realized that he needed to understand more about Zorvian culture if he was going to survive this bizarre situation. He had always known that other species existed in the galaxy, but he never imagined he would be thrust into their world in such an intimate way. Sent compared to her older sisters. "Do you really think that, Laura?" he asked gently. "I mean, we're all stuck in this, but can we actually make it work?" Laura looked up at him, her blue eyes filled with both hope and uncertainty. "I don't know. But maybe if we try, we can at least be kind to each other. I don't want to just follow orders. I want to understand, even if this is forced." Jack nodded slowly, his mind spinning with the weight of their words. They were right in a way. This wasn't just about him or them. It was about their culture, their family's legacy, and the empire that depended on their actions. But at the same time, Jack couldn't help but feel like there was more to this than just duty. He didn't know what the future held, but he had to try to make the best of it for all their sakes. Rilla spoke again, her tone softer than before. "I know this isn't easy for any of us, Jack. We have our own lives, our own dreams, but duty is what we were raised for. You will learn our customs, our ways. It's the only way this can work." Jack didn't know where to begin. There was so much to learn about the Zorvian people, about their culture and their laws. Every day felt like a new challenge, and he didn't know if he was up to it. But the princesses were giving him a chance to understand their world, even if it was forced upon them all. Zira, who had been pacing, stopped suddenly and turned to face him. "Don't think for a second that we won't challenge you," she warned. "This marriage won't be easy. But if you think you can come here and just play the part of a husband without understanding what it means to be a Zorvian, you're mistaken." Jack met her gaze with determination. "I won't be pretending. I'll try to understand. I want to make this work. We have to, don't we?" The room grew quiet as the princesses exchanged looks. Rilla, the calm and collected one, gave a small nod. "Yes, we will do this together. But remember, Jack, this marriage is not just about the four of us. It's about our families, our people, and the future of our empire. Every decision we make affects everyone around us." Jack stood up, feeling the weight of the moment. "I understand. I'll do my best. I won't let you down." In that moment, something shifted. There was still a long way to go, but Jack could see that this wasn't just about following orders. It was about finding a way to make it work for all of them. And maybe, just maybe, they could find something more than just duty in this marriage. The following days felt like a blur for Jack. He spent most of his time with the three Zorvian princesses, trying to understand their ways, their culture, and the traditions that bound them. Every moment was a new challenge, but it also brought moments of connection that Jack hadn't expected. The palace, while beautiful, felt cold at times. It was filled with ancient stone, towering pillars, and ornate decorations that spoke of the Zorvian Empire's long history. But despite the grandeur, Jack often felt isolated, as though he was just a guest in someone else's world. He was still trying to adjust to the idea that his life had completely changed. Rilla, the eldest of the princesses, was often the first to speak during their lessons. She was patient, explaining the customs and traditions of the Zorvian people in a calm and measured way. Jack found her demeanor comforting, though he could also sense the weight of responsibility she carried. She wasn't just a princess. She was a future leader, and every word she spoke was carefully chosen. "Jack," she said one morning as they sat in a quiet study, "I know this situation is difficult for you. But you must understand that Zorvian marriages are not about love in the way humans understand it. They are about unity, strength, and ensuring the survival of the family." Jack nodded. "I think I understand that now, but it's hard for me. I've never been in a situation like this before. Back on Earth, marriages are about choice, not duty." Rilla gave him a thoughtful look. "I know. And I can see that you're trying to understand. That's more than most would do." Zira, the fiery middle princess, was never far behind. She had a strong personality, often challenging Jack's views. She would argue with him, asking difficult questions about Earth's culture and the differences between humans and Zorvians. One afternoon, as they walked through the palace gardens, Zira looked at Jack with a smirk. "So, tell me, human, how do you feel about marrying someone you don't even know?" she asked, her voice filled with a teasing challenge. Jack smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I don't know what to feel. This whole situation is strange. I never imagined I'd be here, but I don't want to make it worse by running away." Zira raised an eyebrow. "You really think you can handle this?" "I'm trying," Jack replied. "And I'm learning." "Slowly, but I am." Zira's expression softened for a moment. "I don't agree with this marriage, but I can see that you're not a coward. Maybe that's something." Jack was taken aback. He wasn't used to compliments, especially from someone as tough as Zira. "Thanks. I guess I'm just doing the best I can." As the days passed, Jack found himself spending more time with Laura, the youngest of the princesses. Unlike her older sisters, Laura was quieter, more reserved. She didn't speak much about her feelings, but Jack could see the struggle in her eyes. It wasn't just about the marriage. It was about the pressure of being a princess in a society that valued duty over everything else. One evening, Jack found Laura sitting alone in a quiet corner of the palace, looking out at the stars through a large window. The night sky was different here, darker and deeper than the one Jack was used to seeing on Earth. It made him feel small, But somehow it also made him feel connected to this strange new world. He walked over to her, unsure of what to say. "You okay?" he asked softly. Laura turned her head slightly, surprised by his question. "I'm fine," she said quickly, but her tone was distant. "Just thinking." Jack sat beside her, looking out at the stars with her. "I know this isn't easy," he said after a long pause. "I didn't expect any of this either. But we have to find a way to make it work, right?" Laura was silent. For a moment, her eyes fixed on the stars. "I don't want to just be a pawn in this game," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I want to be more than that, but I don't know if I can." Jack was struck by the vulnerability in her words. Laura had always seemed so quiet, so composed. To hear her speak like this made Jack realize just how much she was struggling with her role as a princess, her duties, and the weight of her family's expectations. "You're more than that," Jack said gently, his voice full of sincerity. "I can see that in you. You don't have to give up who you are, no matter what they say." Laura finally looked at him, her eyes searching his face. "Do you really think that?" Jack nodded. "I do. You're not just a princess. You're Laura, and that's something no one can take away from you." For the first time since meeting her, Laura smiled. It was a small smile, but it was genuine. "Thank you," she said quietly, as the days went by. Jack's relationships with the princesses began to evolve. Rilla, the eldest princess, had warned him about the intricacies of Zorvian politics, but Jack hadn't fully understood just how deep the game went. It wasn't just about honor anymore. It was about power, control, and survival. And as Jack soon realized, not everyone was happy about the court's decision to marry him into the royal family. One evening, as Jack sat alone in the palace gardens, Rilla approached him. Her face was serious, her violet eyes filled with concern. "Jack, we need to talk," she said, sitting down beside him. "What's going on?" Jack asked, sensing the tension in her voice. "There are factions within the Empire who are unhappy with the way things are progressing," Rilla explained quietly. "They see your marriage to us as a weakness, not a strength. Some of them believe that your presence here will undermine the Zorvian family's power." Jack's heart sank. He had never imagined that his marriage to these three princesses would create such tension. He had hoped that by simply trying to do his best, things would work out. But now he was learning that even his best intentions might not be enough. "Are you saying that ... someone wants to stop this marriage?" Jack asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Rilla nodded. "Yes, there are those who see it as a threat. You, a human, marrying into the royal family, some see it as an insult to our traditions. They want to see this marriage fail, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to make that happen." Jack felt a wave of anxiety wash over him. "So, what do we do? How can I help?" Rilla placed a hand on his shoulder, offering a reassuring smile. "For now, just keep being yourself. The more you understand Zorvian culture, the more you can navigate these political waters, but be careful. There are forces at play here that you don't fully understand." Jack nodded, trying to process everything. He had already been thrust into this strange world, and now it seemed he was going to have to learn to fight back not with weapons, but with words, with knowledge, and with careful decisions. The next few days were filled with tense meetings and secret conversations. Jack spent more time with Rilla, learning about the various factions within the Zorvian Empire. Some of them were old families with long histories, while others were newer, rising to power through military strength or political maneuvering. And all of them were watching the marriage closely, waiting for a chance to strike. Zira, the fiery middle princess, was less concerned with the politics and more focused on the immediate dangers. "We need to act fast," she told Jack one evening as they walked through the palace halls. "If we don't take control of the situation, we'll be at the mercy of these factions. And I don't plan on being anyone's puppet." Jack appreciated Zira's bluntness. She didn't sugarcoat things, and he respected that. But her approach worried him. "How do we take control?" he asked. "It seems like we're up against more than just a few unhappy people. This is about the future of the entire empire." Zira's expression softened, and for a moment Jack saw the vulnerability beneath her tough exterior. I know, but we can't let fear control us. We have to show them that we're not afraid, that we're in this together. If we do that, they'll have no choice but to accept it. Jack thought about her words carefully. He knew she was right in some ways. Fear was a powerful weapon, and if they allowed themselves to be intimidated by these political forces, they would lose before the fight even began. Later that night, Jack met with Laura, the youngest princess. She was quieter than her sisters, but Jack could see the weight of everything on her shoulders. She had her own quiet strength, though it was often hidden behind her shy demeanor. "Laura, how are you holding up?" Jack asked gently as they sat together in a private room. Laura looked up at him, her eyes full of uncertainty. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I don't want to be used as a tool in this political game, but I don't know what else we can do. It feels like we're being pulled in so many different directions." Jack reached out and took her hand, offering her what little comfort he could. "I know it's hard, but we'll get through this. We have to stick together, all of us. If we do, we can fight this." Laura gave him a small smile, though it was tinged with doubt. "I hope you're right, Jack." Over the next few weeks, Jack began to navigate the treacherous waters of Zorvian politics. He learned more about the factions within the empire, meeting with allies and opponents alike. Some of the nobles were sympathetic to the marriage, seeing it as a step toward peace and unity with Earth. Others, however, were determined to see. Jack failed. As Jack's understanding of the political landscape grew, so did his resolve. He realized that this wasn't just about marrying the princesses anymore. It was about protecting them and protecting the future of the Zorvian Empire. There were enemies in the shadows, but Jack was starting to see the light. He wasn't just a pawn in their game. He was becoming a player, but the real challenge was just beginning. Jack knew that the true test would come soon, the day when the political forces would move against him, and he would have to decide how far he was willing to go to protect the women he had come to care for. The days on Zorvia felt like they were moving faster than Jack could keep up. What had started as a bizarre punishment was now a complicated, high-stakes game where every decision could lead to success or failure. He had learned much about Zorvian politics, their ways, and the challenges ahead, but now, the time had come for him to make a choice that would define not just his future, but also the future of the Zorvian royal family. It had been weeks since Jack had begun his new life with the princesses. He had spent countless hours with Rilla, Zira, and Laura, learning about their customs, their strengths, and their weaknesses. He had seen the princesses grow from reluctant partners to true allies. But despite all of their efforts to navigate the political minefield surrounding their marriage, tensions continued to rise. The factions that opposed the union were becoming more vocal, and Jack could sense that the pressure was mounting. One evening, as Jack sat in a small garden courtyard within the palace, Rilla approached him. Her usual calm demeanor was tinged with a trace of worry, something Jack had rarely seen from her. "Jack," Rilla began, her voice quiet but firm, "we need to talk. There's something you need to know. There are people in the Empire who are pushing for a war with Earth. They believe our marriage will weaken us, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to stop it." Jack's heart sank. He had known the marriage had caused political unrest, but he hadn't realized it had escalated to this level. War? But why? "This marriage was supposed to bring peace between our two worlds," Rilla nodded gravely. No, but there are factions that see Earth as a threat. They think the Zorvian family will be seen as weak if we form an alliance with humans. Some of them want to take control and use force to assert dominance. If we don't act quickly, war may become inevitable." Jack felt a cold chill run down his spine. A war with the Zorvian Empire? That was unthinkable. But he could see the seriousness in Rilla's eyes. This wasn't just about politics anymore. It was about survival. "So, what can we do?" Jack asked, his mind racing with possibilities. Rilla took a deep breath, her hands clasped together. "We have two choices, Jack. The first is to give in to the pressure, break off the marriage, and give the factions what they want. It will save the Empire from war, but it will mean abandoning everything we've worked for. The second is to stand firm, to make a bold move and show them that we won't back down. It will be risky, and there's no guarantee that it will work. But if we succeed, we can unite our worlds and secure a future for both of our peoples." Jack looked at her, torn between the two options. Giving in would save the Empire, but it would also mean betraying everything he had come to believe in. Standing firm, on the other hand, would mean risking everything: his life, the lives of the princesses, and the future of Earth itself. As he sat there, the weight of the decision pressing down on him, Zira suddenly appeared from the shadows. She had a determined look on her face, her fiery spirit unmistakable. "I've been listening to you too," Zira said, her tone sharp. "And I've made up my mind. We can't just give up. If we do, we'll be giving in to fear, and that's not the Zorvian way. We have to fight for what's right." Jack looked at her, impressed by her strength. "But how? The stakes are too high." Zira stepped forward, her eyes full of conviction. "We gather support. We talk to the right people, the ones who believe in this marriage. We make it clear that we won't let anyone destroy what we've built. We have the power to change things, but only if we stand together." Jack felt a spark of hope at her words. Zira was right. The Zorvian Empire was filled with people who wanted peace, who believed in unity. He didn't have to face this battle alone. They didn't have to face it alone. Laura, who had been quietly listening from the doorway, stepped into the garden. She had a softer, more uncertain air than her sisters, but there was a quiet strength in her eyes. "I don't want to see us all torn apart by politics," she said, her voice soft but clear. "But I agree with Zira. We have to try. If we don't, we'll be trapped in a world where nothing changes." Jack looked at the three princesses, each of them strong in their own way. They had all come so far since their first meeting, and Jack could see that they were no longer just distant political figures. They were family, his family. And no matter how difficult the road ahead, he knew he couldn't abandon them. "Now, I'm with you," Jack said, his voice steady. "We'll stand together. We'll fight for what's right for our future, whatever it takes." Rilla smiled at him, her eyes filled with pride. "Then it's settled. We'll fight for the future of our people and for the future of Earth." The decision was made. They would stand firm, united in their resolve to fight for peace, but the road ahead would not be easy. The factions would not back down easily, and the danger of war still loomed over them. Jack and the princesses would have to navigate the shifting political landscape carefully, gathering allies and making tough decisions along the way. But for the first time since he arrived on Zorvia, Jack felt a sense of hope. They had chosen to stand up for what they believed in, and no matter what happened, he knew they would face it together. This wasn't just a marriage, it was the beginning of something much bigger. Something that could change the course of history, and Jack, once an ordinary mechanic, now found himself at the heart of a struggle that would define the future of two worlds. The days following their decision to stand firm were some of the most intense Jack had ever experienced. The tension in the palace was palpable, and everywhere he went, he could feel the weight of the decision they had made. There was no turning back now. Jack, along with the princesses, began working tirelessly to rally support. They met with key figures in the Empire, noble families, military leaders, and influential citizens, those who had the power to sway the opinions of others. They explained their position, their commitment to peace, and their belief that this marriage could unite their worlds, not destroy them. It wasn't easy. Many of the nobles were hesitant, unsure whether they should side with the royal family or with the factions calling for war. Some questioned the idea of Earth being involved with the Zorvian Empire at all, while others saw it as an opportunity to expand their influence. But as Jack spent more time talking with them, it became clear that there were more allies than he had initially realized. Rilla, with her calm demeanor and sharp mind, was the most persuasive of them all. She spoke of the history of the Zorvian people, their strength, and their potential for peace with Earth. She reminded the nobles of the power that could come from unity, not division. Zir, the fiery one, was always ready to challenge anyone who spoke out against the marriage. Her passion for the cause was undeniable, and though her blunt approach sometimes caused tension, it also rallied those who shared her vision of a stronger, united empire. She made it clear that there was no room for fear or hesitation, and then there was Laura, the quietest of the three, but no less important. Laura's approach was more personal. She spoke to those who were unsure, those who needed to hear the voice of someone who understood their worries. She spoke softly, but with a conviction that surprised everyone who listened. Her words often reached the hearts of the people, reminding them that this marriage wasn't just a political move, it was about the future, about a world where they could all live together in peace. As the princesses worked alongside Jack, he began to see the growing strength in their unity. They weren't just three royal figures trying to navigate a political game. They were a team, each with their own strengths and weaknesses, but all committed to the same cause. Jack realized that their bond had deepened over the past weeks. And now, it wasn't just about their duty, it was about their shared future. But despite their growing support, there were still those who opposed them. The factions calling for war with Earth didn't back down easily. They spread rumors, staged protests, and tried to turn public opinion against the royal family. It became clear that they would stop at nothing to undermine Jack and the princesses. One day, as Jack walked through the palace gardens, he overheard a conversation between two of the nobles who had opposed the marriage from the start. They spoke in hushed voices, unaware that Jack was nearby. They think they can just ignore the will of the people. One noble said angrily, "The marriage is a mistake. The Zorvian Empire should not be allied with humans. We will never accept this." Jack's heart raced as he realized that the battle was far from over. These factions weren't just going to give up, they were determined to bring the royal family down. Later that evening, Jack met with Rilla, Zira, and Laura to discuss the situation. Rilla was the first to speak, her face serious. "We knew this wouldn't be easy. The factions are stronger than we thought, but we still have time to make our case." "We've come this far," Zira added, her voice filled with determination. "We can't back down now. We'll show them that we're not afraid to fight for what's right." Laura nodded softly, her eyes filled with quiet strength. "We've already made a difference. People are starting to listen to us. We just need to keep pushing." Jack looked at the three of them, feeling the weight of their words. He knew that the road ahead was going to be difficult, but he also knew that they couldn't stop now. They had come too far to turn back. The next few days were filled with intense discussions and debates as the royal family continued to fight for the support they needed. The pressure was building, but Jack could feel a shift. More and more people were beginning to see the truth that this marriage wasn't just a political game. It was about the future of their people, the future of their world. Then, one morning, Jack received an unexpected visitor. A high-ranking noble who had been neutral up until this point approached him with a proposal. "I've heard the arguments," the noble said, his voice calm, "and I'm willing to support you. The marriage may not be perfect, but it's the only way forward. If we stand together, we can create a future that benefits both Zorvia and Earth." Jack felt a wave of relief wash over him. This was the breakthrough they had been waiting for. With this new ally, the tide was beginning to turn. In the days that followed, the royal family continued to build their alliances. The people of Zorvia, once divided, began to see the potential in unity. They started to understand that this wasn't about surrendering to Earth, it was about building a future where both worlds could thrive together. Finally, the moment came when the factions calling for war were forced to retreat. The royal family had won. The marriage, once seen as a weakness, had become a symbol of strength and unity. As Jack stood beside the princesses in the grand hall, he realized just how much they had all changed. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore, they were fighting for something greater. They had chosen to build a future together, and that future was full of possibilities. "We did it," Jack said softly, looking at Rilla, Zira, and Laura. "We made it work." Rilla smiled, her eyes filled with pride. "We did it together." Zira gave a rare, approving nod. "This is just the beginning." Laura looked at Jack with a gentle smile. "The future is ours now." And as Jack stood there, surrounded by the women who had become his family, he knew that this was only the start of something extraordinary. Together, they had forged a path toward peace, and nothing could stop them now.